So very good morning to you all. Today we are going to discuss the topic from unit number 3, star. So we started with star spectrum. So in last class we studied the structure of the star. So in this class, for today's class, we are going to study the stellar evolution. So this stellar evolution is nothing but lifetime of the star. So we are going to study the life period of the star, which is depends on the mass and the time. So for today's topic is a stellar evolution. In stellar evolution, we are going to study the lifetime of the star. So this lifetime of the star depends on the mass of the body. Objective for today's class, as we all know that star plays a vital role in understanding the secrets of the universe. If we want to know the formation of the solar system, if we want to know the characteristics of the various celestial bodies, if you want to know the information about the planets, first we have to understand what is a star. So the star plays a vital role in understanding the secrets of the universe. So here in stellar evolution, we are going to study the changes in the life period of the star. The changes in the life period of star. The changes in life period of star is their birth to their death, growth and the collapse, formation and the collapse. So how the star is going to be formed, what are the secrets behind the formation of the star, and how the stages improves, what are the stages are in between the growth and the death, and finally the end stage. So here we are going to study the changes in the life period of star. It's called as a lifetime of the star, that is birth, death. So these changes in the life period of the star is with respect to the mass and the time. So before going to the detailed study, we know that gravity holds the star together. Gravity holds the star together, and the gas pressure prevents a star from collision. So there are two different types of forces acts on the medium. One is inward force and another one is the outward force. As we can see here, so here we are having two different types of the forces. One is the inward force and another one is the outward force. The inward force is the gravitational force and the outward force is the pressure. See, when these two forces are balanced with each other, when these two forces are balanced with each other, then only we can able to see the formation of the star. So then only we can able to see the formation of the star. When the two forces are balanced with each others, when these two forces are balanced with each others, then only the orbital position of the planet will be in its own path. A star is usually at equilibrium, gravity compression inwards is balanced by the heat pressure outwards. So when these forces are not balanced with each other, what happens? When this balance is upset, what will happen? Suppose if the gravity is greater than the pressure. When the gravity is greater than the pressure, then the star shrinks. If gravity is lesser than the pressure, then the star grows. Actually, we are discussing about these two phenomena. We are considering these two conditions. We are studying the growth and we are going to study the collapse. So the growth and the death, the birth and the death of the star. So the growth happens when the gravity is lesser than the pressure. The collapse, the death will be happens when the gravity is greater than the pressure. So before going to our consideration, the lifetime of the star, we have to know the balancing force in the star. The balancing force is nothing but the gravitational force under the gas pressure. The gravitational force is the force of attraction. The gas pressure is the force of repulsion. When these two forces are balancing with each other, attractive force and the repulsive force, when it's balancing with each other, then only we can just analyze the property which was present in the stellar. So let's start our discussion. So here a small introduction for our today's topic, lifetime of the star. As we know, human life scale, from the human life scale, most of the stars do not appear to change their property. If we look for billions of a year, we could see that the star, how they are born and how they are aged and finally how they are died. So the factor describing the stellar evolution is its only mass. So based on the mass, here mass is going to play a main sequence. So the mass is the main property to describe the lifetime of the star. So the lifetime of the star, it's mainly depends on the mass. We know that a star are hot bodies of a glowing gas. So at the center, the center is nothing but we called as a core. The core contains of hot matter. The core contains of hot matter. The hot matter is nothing but a plasma. We used that word plasma. Plasma are the highly ionized gas. Plasma are the highly ionized gas. So these highly ionized gas takes place due to the nuclear reaction. As we all already know that the nuclear reaction is the important reaction which takes place in the star core. Here we are having the reaction is nothing but nuclear fusion reaction. So due to the nuclear fusion reaction, we can able to study the center of the star. It's a hot glowing gas. Is nothing but a plasma. It's a highly ionized radiation. So the lifetime of the star is mainly depends on the mass. So how much of a mass we are just collecting in the center. So that mass is the main dependent property to study the structure, to study the property, to distinguish the characteristics, and also to know the lifetime of the stellar evolution. So we can say that from the color, if the color of the star is seems to be in a blue, if the color of the star is seems to be in a blue, so it determines that the star is at a very hot temperature. The star temperature is very, very hot. When the color of the star is seems to be in a red, color of the star is seems to be in a red, then it shows that the star is at the last stage. That is the coolest stage. So the core of the star is very, very hot. The surrounding layer, the surrounding region, the surrounding just shells behind the core is seems to be in just a red one. So with this introduction, we are going to start our studies. See here from this another one slide, we as to know that the formation of the star, so it's not takes place within a minute, it will not takes place within a second or within an hour, but the formation of the star, the growth as well as the death of the star will takes place for billions of years. So from this slide, we have just shown the formation of the star. It takes place from the billions of the years, not for just a minimized time. It takes a long time. So here we are going to study the formation, how the star is going to be formed. For that, what are the principles we are going to use? Then the mechanism, what is happens for the collapse, and finally the death stage. So this the formation is nothing but a birth. The collapse is the death stage of the star. The reaction is the interstage, intermediate stage. So what is happening inside the core once the nebula formation is takes place? So the main sequences of the stars. Here we have just studied that we are just shown a blue color as well as we have shown a red color. The red color means it indicates the coolest medium. Blue color means it indicates the hottest medium. So here we have shown some example. Blue star. Its blue star is a big, hot, bright. The mass is up to 200 solar masses. So here the lifetime of the star is based on their masses. Already we have mentioned the lifetime for a small solar mass, the lifetime for a very large solar mass. So in our syllabus, we are having the lifetime of the star with respect to two masses. One with slow mass, that is a low mass, one solar mass, and another with the more than one solar mass. So the blue star, it's a biggest star, a hottest star, and the brightest star, because the temperature of the core is very, very huge. So here the formation, it's up to 200 solar masses. The yellow star is the intermediate stage. The yellow star is the intermediate stage. So it acts in between the close to the one solar mass. The red star is the final stage. The red star is the final stage. It's a small, because the core will completely just fuse. The core will completely ejected. The core will completely changes. So there we can't able to see the core. That's why we are using that word red star. The red star is a small, cool, and dim. So down to 0.1 solar masses. So when these mechanism is get to over, the started with the blue, then it comes to the immediate stage yellow, and finally it comes to red star. Once the red formation takes place, once the core, the gas fuel is completely burned from the medium, then it becomes a red giant. So from the red giant, it converts into the white draft. So these are all the lifetime or the life cycle or the changes which are going to be studied from the solar masses, that is from the star. So this is the main sequence, one stage, then it comes to the second stage, and finally it comes to the third stage. So from this slide, we are studying the formation, then the just a reaction, and then the collapse. The formation is the main sequence, reaction is the intermediate, and the collapse is the final one. As we all know that the lifetime of the star, the formation of the star, it takes place for billions of billions of years. So here we have shown the periodic table, as we are having a n number of an element, but for the formation of the stellar, we have focused only on a particular elements. That is, we are going to consider the oxygen, we are going to consider a carbon, we are going to consider a hydrogen, and we are going to consider a helium. So with this presence of these four elements, we are going to study the formation of our solar star. See here from this slide, what we can able to understand. The starting stage is the nebula, stellar nebula. So these stellar nebula is the growth of the star. The growth of the star takes place from the stellar nebula. This will be the first stage, initial stage. So from these, we can study the lifetime of the star. From these, we can study the lifetime of the star by two process, by two way. One for average or low mass star. Another for high mass star. So we can study the lifetime of the star by considering the low mass or by considering the high mass. So with this, we are going to start our consideration. Let's see the life cycle of the star. As I already just shown here, we are going to consider the two different type of the solar masses. One low mass and another high mass. For today's topic, for today's class, we are going to discuss only about the average or low mass star. So for this, let's see the structure. So this is the total life cycle of the star. It starts from the stellar nebula. The stellar nebula is the initial stage. As we all know that, what is a stellar nebula? Nebula is the mixture of, nebula is the mixture molecules. So the molecules is nothing but called as a stellar nebula. The nebula, it's a Latin word. We already learned about it. So the meaning for the nebula, it's mist. Mist is something but a cool surface. So the surface is the cool surface. It's consisting of dust particles, the gas molecules. So from this, we are going to start our life cycle of the star. We are going to consider two types of the mass. One an average, that is a low mass, and the second one is a huge mass, massive mass. So we are going to start with the low mass. So here I have given the stages. Stage number 1, stage number 2, stage number 3, stage number 4. So for our today's class, we are going to study these 4 stages, 1, 2, 3, 4, because we have taken only the low mass. So in between these stage 1 and 2, So in between this stage 1 and 2, we have to learn what is a nebula, we have to learn what is a photostar, and we have to learn what is a nuclear reaction, and we have to learn main sequence, and we have to learn the hydrogen and the helium flash. So these are all the parameters which takes place in between these two regions, from the starting to the second stage. So the following properties we have to be learned: nebula, photostar, nuclear reaction, main sequence, hydrogen burning, then helium burn, and then carbon and the oxygen burn. So these are all the various flashes which takes place here in the life cycle of the star. So once the second stage is over, then it's converted into the red giant. It's converted into a red giant. So this red giant is nothing but the complete collapse of the core. So the core, it's in a very hot, just a medium. It's in a plasma, ionized gas. So the radiation will exit out. The radiation will starts to exit to its outer surface from the inner surface. And one stage, we can able to see that the radiation is completely exited because of the fuse of the hydrogen and the helium gas. Once the hydrogen and the helium gas is completely fused out, then the medium, it becomes as a red giant. The red giant is the coolest part. So from the red giant, then it's started bursting out. Sudden collapse will be takes place. That sudden collapse is nothing but makes the formation of the planetary nebula. So these are planetary nebula we have considered here, stellar nebula as. So the stellar nebula and the planetary nebula almost are equal. So this is the birth stage and this will be the death stage. Once the planetary nebula takes place, then we can able to see small white dots. That small white dots is nothing but it called as the white dwarf. So the size of the white dwarf, it's almost equal to the size of the Earth. So these we have to be study here. So we are going to start with the stellar nebula. So this is the birth. Once the nebula formation takes place, then we have to know what is a photostar. We have to know what is a nuclear reaction. Then we have to know what is a main sequence. Then we have to know what is hydrogen and helium flash. Once the second stage is yet to end, then a formation of the giant red star will be take place. So from this, we are going to consider the planetary nebula. From the planetary nebula, it goes to the white dwarf. So this is just the formation and the collapse for low mass. So similarly, we have to study the same mechanism for a massive mass, for the huge mass. So the both are almost similar. The variation will be starts once the giant red star is occurred. Then the changes will be happens. For the low mass, we are just studying the planetary nebula and the white dwarf. But for the massive mass, after the occurrence of the supergiant, just a red star, we are studying the supernova. Then we are going to study the neutron star, and then we are going to study the black hole. So these are all the changes between the two types of the masses, one with the low mass and another with the huge mass. So let's start our just a process with the average mass. So this is the lifetime of the star, about one solar mass. So we can see the mind map. So here we have shown the mind map. So this mind map is for the lifetime of the star, about one solar mass. See, I have just drawn this mind map for to explain this upper region. See here, we can just see the stages for the lifetime of the star for one solar mass. The first stage is the nebula. The second stage is the photostar. The third stage is the nuclear reaction. The fourth stage is a main sequence star. The fifth stage is the hydrogen burn even faster. The sixth stage is the helium flash. Hydrogen converts into the helium. So from the helium, then it's just completely fused to carbon under the oxygen formation. And once the hydrogen and the helium it's completely burst out, then we are entering into the seventh stage. It's called the red giant. So from the red giant, we have entered into the white dwarf, and from the white dwarf, we are finally entering into the planetary nebula. See, we are started our process with this nebula, and finally we have ended the process with the nebula. Once again, what happens? This nebula will be the initial stage, then it converts into the protostar, then the nuclear reaction takes place, then main sequence star will happens, then hydrogen fused out, then it's convert into the helium, then helium fused out, then it goes on to the carbon and the oxygen. Finally, the red giant will be takes place. Then it goes to the white dwarf. So this is the life cycle actually. So this is the life cycle of the stellar evolution, the life cycle of the star for a one solar mass. Let's see one by one. The first stage, the stellar evolution, stage one, it's a nebula. So as we know that the nebula is a newborn star. The nebula is a newborn star. So the newborn star takes place from the combination, from the mixture of the dust particle along with the gas molecules. A star are born in gas nebulas, and nebulas are immerse of gas where stars are born. So they collect gas from their surrounding. Actually, this concept we have already learned the formation of the nebula in the second topic. So here they enter the main sequence at various stages, depends on the mass they collected. So what I have already informed, that same process just mentioned here. The nebula means it's nothing but just a molecular cloud with the dust particle. When this molecular cloud it's just combined with the dust particle, then we can able to see the a mass formation. So this mass formation takes place when the star is at the equilibrium stage. So the equilibrium stage is nothing but, as we all know, that the gravitational force pulls together the gas pressure just oppose in the outward direction. When these two forces, inward force and the outward force, are balancing with each other, then we can able to see a small core formation. That small core formation is nothing but the birth of the nebula. See, in a nebula, actually we have just learned this one. A nebula is nothing but a vast molecular cloud. So the vast molecular cloud which contains the dust and the gas. So we having the dust and the gas particles. So when these dust and the gas particles are just evenly collapses with each other, so it results in the enormous amount of heat. It results in the enormous amount of heat with the nuclear fusion reaction. So here just we have shown a gravitational pull under the pressure outside. So what is happening here is the hydrogen is fused with just a helium in the reaction mechanism. It's called the nuclear fusion reaction. So the nebula is the molecular cloud. A nebula is the combination of the dust and the gas. So these be the actually the initial stage. Here we can able to see the dark the region. So this dark region is nothing but the collection of these gas and the dust particles. So they just initially form like this. Then later on, due to the internal pressure under the gravitational pull, they collides with each other, and the color of this medium will be changes into the red hot. So the second stage is the photostar. So as we know that the occurrence of this photostar, the photostar is the totally there, just the red giant. The photostar is the just here, it's nothing but a hottest medium. So this hottest medium is takes place due to the gravitational disturbance. So the gravitational disturbance is nothing but it's the collapse. It's the collapse takes place between the just a molecule cloud and the dust particles. So what causes actually due to the gravitational disturbance, helium and the hydrogen to clump together. Actually, they attracts with each other. Helium and hydrogen clump together. So when these two particles are clumped together with the dust particle, then the mass will increases. Actually, the mass will increases. So when the mass tends to increase, then automatically the internal pressure also increase. So this internal pressure in turns makes the center core to be a hot medium. That hottest form of the medium here, it's called as the photostar. It's called as the photostar. So the first stage is the nebula. The second stage is the photostar. The third stage is the nuclear reaction. So only after the formation of these nebula, then after the formation of the photostar, so the nuclear reaction will be takes place. So in general, the nuclear reaction is the bombardment between the two different kinds of the atoms. So when the nucleus of two different kinds of atom are fused together, so when two different kind of the atoms are collides with each other, bombarded with each other, fused with each other, a tremendous amount of energy released from the medium. So it's called the nuclear fusion. So here in our just a formation of the star in stellar evolution, so we are going to just use this same nuclear fusion reaction. So here we have taken a small atoms. The small atoms is nothing but a hydrogen fused with this large atom. The large atom is nothing but a helium. When the hydrogen is fused with the helium, it produces amount of energy is takes place in the form of heat. It takes place in the form of heat. So the third stage. Actually, the first stage is the formation of the nebula. The second stage is the photostar. The third stage is the nuclear fusion. So the nuclear fusion is the just the lightest atom, that is a hydrogen. When it's collided with a large atom, that is a helium, it produces an enormous amount of energy. That enormous amount of energy, it takes place in the form of heat. Let's see this nuclear fusion mechanism in detail from this slide. See, the nuclear fusion reaction is nothing but fusion takes place between the two protons. So initially, here from this slide, we can say that the nuclear fusion reaction begins with the two protons fusing with each other. So here we are having one proton, and also here we are having one proton. These will fuse with each other, attracts with each other, collides with each other. So when these two protons are fused with each other, then they will become an unstable medium. Then they will become as an unstable medium, and later on a collision will be takes place. As I already informed, when the two protons collides with each other, an enormous amount of galactic wave will be collision. Sorry, galactic collision will be takes place. An enormous amount of galactic collision will be takes place. That galactic collision induces a shock wave. So this is nothing but a shock wave. Here the collision is in a galactic collision. The galactic collision is a takes place between these two proton. So these are two proton fused with each together. When these are two proton fused together, then a galactic collision takes place. This galactic collision, which gives rise to the occurrence of the shark wave. So this shark wave is nothing but an energy release. So from this slide, we can just followed by the sequence of the beta decay. So the beta decay is nothing but a radioactive decay. So this radioactive decay is nothing but an unstable atomic nuclear loses energy by radiation. So this is an unstable nuclei. So this is also an unstable nuclei. So these unstable nuclei collides with each other. The collision is considered as a galactic collision. So during this galactic collision takes place. So once the dark wave takes place, followed by a sequent beta decay, we are just radiating the high energy. So high energy, high speed electron or the positrons emitted by this radiation. So here we can able to see the yellow color, sorry, blue color. So this blue is nothing but an emitted radiation. This emitted radiation is takes place from the beta decay. Beta decay is nothing but an unstable atomic nuclear loss energy by radiation. So that energy radiated here, it's nothing but electron or a positron. So, and finally, we are just getting the deuterons. When a proton and the neutrons are just combined together, then it's called as a deuteron. See, we have started with the protons. When two protons fusing with each other, a collision will be takes place. As the result, we are just by the followed decay. Here we are having a proton and the neutron. So these are proton and the neutron. It's nothing but it's called as a deuteron. So the deuteron is nothing but it's called as a hydrogen, a stable particle. So the unstable particle converts it into a stable particle. So the deuteron means two hydrogen. The next stage to the deuteron is the tritium. Here we are having the three hydrogen, but we are not going to study about the tritium. We are discussing only about the deuteron. So this deuteron is the nucleus of the high hydrogen. Actually, the hydrogen which consisting of just a proton and the neutron. One proton and the one neutron. So these heavy hydrogen which has a proton and the just a neutron, it's called as a deuteron. So these deuteron, what happens? These deuteron are involved in the nuclear reaction that makes a helium. So these are the stages. So we started with the nuclear fusion reaction, the protons colliding with each other. As a result, a highly energetic just a particle is eliminated from the radioactive decay. Then the hydrogen nucleus will take place. The neutron, it's called as a deuteron. Further, this heavy hydrogen collides with just an internal medium by the nuclear reaction, which makes to converts into a helium. So these are the stages. Hydrogen, and further in the nuclear reaction, it's converted into a helium. So the helium is nothing but a massive mass. So it has a two proton. Actually, we can able to see the just colors. Here we are having a two green circles, and here we are having two red circles. So it shows that we are having a two protons and the two neutrons. So these are two protons and there's a two neutrons is that takes place due to the process of the astonation. So it's nothing but a process by which it burns to form a helium. The conversion. So conversion of the hydrogen into the helium. It's called as the astonation. So this is a process. Actually, the stages what's taken place in the nuclear reaction, which we have mentioned here. The nuclear reaction is nothing but just the reaction takes place between the lighter and heavier atom. The lighter atom is the just a hydrogen. When hydrogen fused with the helium, it will produce an enormous amount of energy. So how this enormous amount of energy is produced, how this hydrogen is converted into the helium, that changes the process only we have just shown here. The fusion reaction begins with the two protons that we can able to see here, two protons. So these are two protons are unstable proton. So these unstable proton are just fused together. When these two unstable protons are fused together, as a result of the collision, we can able to see a sharp wave generation. That the sharp wave generation is nothing but a release of a high energetical beta particle. The high energetic beta particle is nothing but emission of an electron or the positrons. So these are two protons, they have in turns converted into the deuterons. So these are deuterons is nothing but a combination of the proton and the neutron. So these are two proton, it's nothing but called as a heavy hydrogen. Again, this is a heavy hydrogen, again fused in the nuclear reaction, and it will result in the formation of the helium. So the helium is nothing but two protons and the two neutrons. Here we are having one and one, but for the helium we are saying that two protons and the two neutrons. So these are process, the conversion from the hydrogen to the helium, it's taken place from the astonation. So astonation means the changes, conversion. Hydrogen converts it into the helium. So this is the just the entire mechanism which was happening in the lifetime of the star in the nuclear reaction mechanism. So this will be the just the third stage. Now the main sequence behind. So this stage, it's called as the stage number 5. So as we know that from these structure, hydrogen. So from here we have mentioned that on a hydrogen, heavy hydrogen is formed. So the hydrogen fuel is very, very large here. When the hydrogen fuel is very, very large, what happens? The star, it seems to be in a hot matter. A star will remains in these matter for billions of years. The star remains in this matter for billions of years, because when the hydrogen completely burst out, when the medium is having a hydrogen fuel, then this hydrogen fuel makes the star to be remained in for billions of years. But what happens? Slowly, the just a fusing of all the hydrogen in the core into the helium. Actually, the hydrogen will burn out. The hydrogen will burn out. When the hydrogen gas is burning in the just a core, the energy will be reduced. The energy will be reduced actually. So when the energy is reducing, then we can able to just see the changes. See here. Then even burn faster. When hydrogen even burn faster, it radiates outwards and pull away from the core. So these only the stages. So here, when the hydrogen level is huge, we can able to see a hot core. When the hydrogen level decreases, when the hydrogen burns out, when the radiation, it's just radiated out from the core, what happens? The size of the core will be changes. The size of the core will be changes. Here we have shown the second stage, the hydrogen level is decreases. Here the third stage, again the hydrogen level is decreases. This will be the fourth stage, the hydrogen level comparatively decreases, and this will be the fifth stage, the hydrogen level is decreases. When the hydrogen burns out faster, when the energy is released from the core towards the out happens, the size of the core will be reduces. The size of the core will be reduces. That is, the outer layer expands. The outer layer expands. When the outer layer expands, then it became a cool. Thus, moves more and more red. See, we can see the stages here. When hydrogen is burned completely from the core, when hydrogen is completely burned from the core, what happens? So initially we can say the size of the core. So when the size of the core is huge, it shows that the hydrogen level is more. The hydrogen level is more. When the hydrogen burns, then the size of the core decreases because the energy is radiated in the outward direction, radiated to the surface. So the energy radiation makes the size of the core to diminish. When the energy is just further decreasing, when the hydrogen is further goes out, the size of the core decreases. And a similar way, how the core size is decreases. So initially it's a huge, the hydrogen level is more. When the hydrogen level is decreases, actually when the hydrogen level is more, the size is like this. When the hydrogen level decreases, we can able to see the further reduced, and finally we can see that in the stage number F, the last stage, the star maintained in for around billions a year. It will be maintained in this stage even when the hydrogen fuel is completely burned. It will maintain stage for billions of years. Once the hydrogen fuel is completely, then actually the process of the helium mechanism will be takes place. It's called as the phase change stage. So there is no hydrogen. When there is no hydrogen in the medium, a phase change takes place. This is a phase change stage. It's called as a helium flash. The phase change, it's called as a helium flash. So here in the helium flash, the star is able to fuse a heavier helium nuclei into larger nuclei like carbon and then oxygen. So this will be the third stage. The first stage is the hydrogen formation. The second stage is the helium flash. Is the from the helium, that helium gas starts to burn out, and when the helium gas is completely eliminated, it results in the occurrence of the carbon and the oxygen. So this is a process, it's called as triple alpha process. Triple alpha process. The star has a whole new source of a fuel in all the helium. It will be making for billions of years. So here we can see that process. These circles is nothing but an isotope. The circle is nothing but an isotope. So the isotope is nothing but just the combination of the nuclei. So we started with the single nuclei. That single nuclei just combined to form a two nuclei. Started with a single nuclei. The single nuclei combined to form a two nuclei. So these are two nuclei is nothing but a heavy. So these are two nuclei. In turns, they have just combined to form a four nuclei. These are four nuclei is nothing but it's called as a helium. Helium. So once again, there's a helium gas burst out. When it's completely burst out, then they will result in the formation of n numbers of the gases. So beryllium, carbon, and the hydrogen. See here we can say the isotope. It's made up of just n number. So here we are not having the four numbers, but here we are having eight numbers, eight nucleus. So these eight nucleus, when in turns it collides internally during this nuclear collision reaction, they will result in the formation of the 12 nucleus, and which in turns results in the formation of the 16 nucleus. So these are just development. So these the changes happening in the process of the nuclear reaction. The changes, the process here, it's called as triple alpha process. So these are triple alpha process reaction mechanism takes place only in the helium illuminated, then it's converted into the helium flash stage. From the helium flash stage, we are going to just that helium is just burst out, and finally red giant. So this will happen only when the core is predominantly consisting of and the hydrogen. So here we are having the shells formation. Cells formation. So not only we are having the hydrogen, but we are having the helium, and also we are having carbon and also the oxygen shell. So these makes to formulate the formation of the giant star. So these are all the stages which are just seen here. So when the hydrogen is burned, then the helium gases starts to fuse out. When the helium gas is also burned, then the formation in the carbon and the oxygen. So we can see that when the carbon and oxygen takes place here in the core, then the medium completely changes. They have converted into the giant star, that is a red giant star. So finally, when core is completely eliminated, what will happen? So when the red giant stage takes place, then due to the pressure, it will collapse. And they will result in the formation of the tiny sized white just celestial bodies. That white tiny celestial bodies here, it's nothing but called as the white draft. So these white draft is nothing but just a small dots that we can able to see here. So these it's just takes after the collapse. So once the white draft is just occurred, when the red is collapsed, then it will result. So this will be the last stage. So this stage it's called as a planetary nebula stage. So this planetary nebula stage is nothing but what we have seen in the first stellar nebula stage. So that same we have taken at the. What happens? The just a cool body with the gas cloud with the dust particle. They are just combined with the, just a equilibrium condition, inward force and the outward force. Then the mass will increases. When the mass will start to increase, then the internal pressure also develop. That internal pressure in turn undergoes a nuclear fusion reaction, and it makes the core to be a hotter one. That the various stages of the lifestyle of the star will be takes place. So this will be the last stage. So we have just end the lifestyle of the star with the low solar mass. So these are the stages. This will be the last stage. So this the last before stage, white draft stage. This be the before stage of the white draft, the red giant stage. So here when the red giant stage takes place, we can able to see the medium consisting of a carbon and the oxygen, because the helium and the hydrogen is completely burst out. Then the remaining gaseous particles will provided here in the medium, it's carbon and the hydrogen. Sorry, carbon and the oxygen. So these are just a helium flash. So these the helium flash stage. So these are the stages, how the hydrogen is converting into the helium, how the hydrogen gas is completely burst out, and what the just a core happens to the happens to the core. Initially, the core stage is huge. When the hydrogen is burst out, the size of the core decreases. It means that the radiation it's exit out to the outer surface from the inner surface, and finally the core stage is completely diminishes. We can't able to see that core there, but to be in a hot red giant star. So these are the stages, the hydrogen burst outs. It is the initial stage. So these are nuclear reaction process. So what the mechanism is taking place? Initially two proton, but finally it results into a neutron, proton and the neutron. So these are proton and the neutron is nothing but a heavy hydrogen. So this heavy hydrogen undergoes a nuclear reaction once again, and it results in the formation of a two proton and the two neutron. It's nothing but a helium. So this is the nuclear fusion reaction mechanism. Protostar is the collection, actually collection of the masses. So these mass in turns just developed its internal pressure. That internal pressure becomes a hot protostar. So with these we end our today's class. So if you have any just doubt, queries, we can